Whether it was Elder Jia on the stage or Island Master Qi and Master Ouyang in the VIP seats, all of them had ugly expressions on their faces. Well, no matter who was being pointed at and scolded, they wouldn't have a good expression. However, they couldn't do anything about it. Otherwise, it would confirm their reputation of using their power to bully others. Elder Jia thought that these people would give up after a few words, so he just pretended not to hear it. Who would have thought that more and more people would say sarcastic words, and it would be more and more unpleasant to hear? The situation had already gone out of control. Although He Xinjiu, who was sitting at the wonton stall, had a good impression of Elder Jia, it was not to the point where she stood up for him. Therefore, even though her small face was a little gloomy, she had no intention of stepping up to the stage to help him out. At this moment, the old man from the beginning pointed his finger at her again. Everyone, these big sects are going too far. Let's not talk about what happened yesterday. That He Hengchuan only stole the limelight from the Nameless Sword sect, but he was killed by that Yun Chujiu. What kind of unreasonable behavior was this? What kind of vicious heart was this? Their Nameless Sword sect would never allow others to be stronger than them. Once there was someone stronger than them, they would use all sorts of reasons to kill them. If that Yun Chujiu was killed by He Hengchuan yesterday, would the Nameless Sword sect pretend that nothing had happened? They are relying on the strong to bully the weak. They disregard human lives. As soon as the old man's words left his mouth, many people who thought that they were righteous immediately chimed in. You're right. I wanted to say it yesterday. That Yun Chujiu is too vicious. Isn't it just a contest of swords? She actually killed He Hengchuan. She's too vicious at such a young age. Also, what ancestral teachings she said are even more unreasonable. If someone offends me, I'll take his dog life. Does she treat everyone else like dogs? I heard that Yun Chujiu used to be the southern continent's female emperor of Zephyr. A girl actually became some female emperor. One look and you can tell that she's not a decent person. She might have done some shameless things in private. As these words fell into He Xinjia's ears, the killing intent on He Xinjia's body became more and more intense. The old couple was trembling so much that they were like fallen leaves in the wind. Please visit P-alpha-1. If she could endure being ridiculed like this, then she would not be He Xinjiu. Yun Chujiu stood up and was about to leave when the old man asked with concern, Little fairy, what are you going to do? Yun Chujiu restrained the killing intent on her body and said to the old couple, the two of you help me cook a bowl of wontons. Leave me to eat when I come back. I'll go and talk to the trash. I'll be right back. The corners of Yun Chujiu's mouth curled up. In the book, there was a story about warm wine beheading Hua Xiong. Today, she would have a hot wonton torturing the crowd. P-alpha-1. At this moment, someone saw Yun Chujiu. Immediately, everyone's gaze fell on Yun Chujiu. There were also some people who used malicious language to curse. There were even some who threatened to kill the people. Master Ouyang and the others in the VIP seats had a change in expression. They immediately ordered the Nameless Sword sect's disciples to protect Yun Chujiu, so that she wouldn't really be beaten up by the crowd. They also had some complaints in their hearts. Why was she joining in the fun at this time? Wasn't she deliberately looking for trouble? Chu Feng and Xiao Yu were the first to arrive in front of Yun Chujiu. Xiao Yu said in a bad mood, Where are you going? Follow me to the VIP seats and sit down. Yun Chujiu faintly smiled. What are you going to the VIP seats for? I have a clear conscience, so there's naturally no need to hide. I want to see who dares to touch me. Yun Chujiu took out a large kitchen knife as she spoke, then, she pointed at the person who was shouting the loudest and said, You, right, it's you. Didn't you want to beat me up? Come, let's spar. If you don't dare to accept the challenge, you'll be a turtle bastard. The crowd clearly did not expect Yun Chujiu to be so arrogant at this point in time. For a moment, it became much quieter. Although the person pointed at by Yun Chujo was a little timid, Yun Chujo did not dare to do anything to him under the watchful eyes of the crowd. She said arrogantly, "It's not that I don't dare to accept the challenge, it's just that I don't want to fight with you. You vicious bitch, sooner or later someone will take care of you." Yun Chujo laughed lightly and said, "Get out of the way. I'll have a good talk with him." These bystanders were like grass on the fence. They had been cursing and shouting together. If they really got serious, they would all move back. What a joke. This Yun Chujo killed people just because she said so. If she were to slash them, how could they argue? Therefore, the crowd made a path. Yun Chujo walked in front of the man with a large kitchen knife. Yun Chujo sized up the man and said, "Don't say that I'm bullying you. Apologize right now and I'll pretend that nothing happened. Otherwise, I'll bleed you to clear your head." When the man saw that Yun Chujo was serious, he immediately became a little timid. However, he still felt that Yun Chujo would not make a move, so he shouted, "Yun Chujo, don't think that you're so great just because you're a disciple of the Nameless Sword sect. Who do you think you are?" Before he could finish his words, Yun Chujo's large kitchen knife was placed on his neck. This person was just an itinerant cultivator. Even if Yun Chujo was just a small fry in the Nameless Sword sect, it was still effortless for her to deal with him. Rho Alpha D Alpha and Nu, the man was no longer as arrogant as before. He thought that a super sect like the Nameless Sword sect would definitely cherish their feathers and have a lot of scruples. Who would have thought that Yun Chujo was a fucking female bandit? While he was hesitating, Yun Chujo's kitchen knife cut his neck again. The man quickly said, "Apologize, apologize, I apologize. I was talking nonsense. I'm sorry, please visit P Alpha Alpha-1. Ko, Yun Chujo snorted coldly and let go of the man. He was just a Tom, Dick, and Harry. Her target was not him, she just wanted to take care of him. With this incident, the people who were shouting earlier immediately quieted down. However, there were still some people who were shouting. Yun Chujo glanced at them and did not say anything. Instead, she walked towards the old man with triangular eyes who had fanned the flames previously, San Jiaoyan. The old man with triangular eyes was clearly much calmer than the person from before, his face was filled with ridicule. Yun Chujo walked in front of him and said indifferently, "This hypocrite, you actually have a belly full of big principles. Why don't we go on stage and talk about it?" Xiao Yu, who was following behind Yun Chujo, couldn't help but laugh out loud. Hypocrite? This trash's mouth was really sarcastic. The triangular-eyed old man glanced at Yun Chujo with a gloomy expression and sneered, "This is also good. It's just nice to let the people of the world see the true colors of the so-called famous sects like San Jiaoyan." The crowd automatically opened a path, and Yun Chujo and the triangular-eyed old man jumped onto the high platform one after the other. Elder Jia did not know what Yun Chujo was up to. He looked at Yun Chujo with an inquisitive look. Yun Chujo took out a chair and smiled. "Elder Jia, please sit by the side and wait for me for a while. If this hypocrite can't win against me, he might shamelessly attack me. When the time comes, please help me take care of him and kill him. Elder Jia." Chapter 42-46 Beggars still find it smelly. Although Elder Jia was a little confused, he still took the chair and sat to the side. Yun Chujo then said to San Jiaoyan, "Come, hypocrite, repeat what you said just now." San Jiaoyan's face was gloomy as he repeated what he had said before, and his words were even more intense, attracting the support of many onlookers. Yun Chujo waited for him to finish his sentence. She slowly took out her teacup and sipped a few mouthfuls of tea before saying, "Come, let's go through them one by one. First, you said that the so-called teachings of the Nameless Sword sect and the Flying Flower Island are just for fame. The sword techniques taught are all trash. TSK, there's a very unpleasant sentence that I'm willing to say, but it's the most suitable to be used here. That is, beggars still find it smelly." As soon as Yun Chujo finished her sentence, the people below immediately started to shout in dissatisfaction, "Yun Chujo, you've gone too far. Who are you calling beggars? Great, so you big sects have always treated us as beggars. You've really gone too far. Elder Jia wished that he could go up and shut Yun Chujia's mouth. Are you fucking here to help us? The triangular-eyed old man had a look of contempt on his face. This Yun Chujio was nothing more than San Jiaoyan. After everyone's voices quieted down slightly, Yun Chujio said indifferently, "Were you all very angry just now? Did you think that my words were very unpleasant? However, the words that you said about our nameless sword sect and the Flying Flower Island were several times more unpleasant than this. It was even more chilling than this. We're fishing for fame." Everyone in the northern continent knew about the nameless sword sect and the Flying Flower Island. Why would we waste manpower and resources to come here and advertise? Besides, you should all know that even the disciples of our nameless sword sect, the sword techniques practiced by the outer disciples, inner disciples, and true disciples were all different. This wasn't looking down on anyone. It's not that we look down on outer sect disciples. It's that the higher the level of sword techniques, the higher the requirements for one's aptitude, spiritual power, and comprehension. If we really teach the sword techniques that the inner sect disciples practice to the outer sect disciples, it's not because we look down on them, but because we're harming them. If we're not careful, we'll suffer a backlash or even suffer from chi deviation. And although there's no lack of people with high spiritual power, most of them shouldn't be a match for the inner sect disciples of large sects, right? If we were to teach you high-level sword techniques rashly, if you were to go mad or suffer a backlash from your sword techniques, wouldn't we be charged with intentional murder? When everyone heard Yun Chujia's words, they couldn't help but feel a little embarrassed because what Yun Chujio said was the truth. Even though they were all disciples of the nameless sword sect, the sword techniques they practiced were different. Moreover, many of them weren't even as good as the outer sect disciples, let alone the inner sect disciples. Yun Chujio continued, also, even if we don't have those considerations from before, the sect has its own rules. If all the sword techniques can be casually taught to outsiders, would that be fair to the disciples in the sect? Ignoring the others, I only joined the nameless sword sect after going through a narrow escape. If you can learn the nameless sword sect's high-tier sword techniques so easily, would I still take the risk to take the test? I don't know what those hecklers are thinking. Do they think that the various sects will stupidly pass on all their treasures to you just because you heckled? Or are you simply harboring evil intentions and trying to turn this sword technique conference into the final realm? Chapter 42-47 Red-eyed green-furred turtle Yun Chujia's tone suddenly became stern. If the sword technique conference doesn't take place, who will suffer the greatest loss? Don't you have any idea? They just casually put some bait, and you're going to take the bait? Where's your brain? If the sword technique conference doesn't take place, be it the nameless sword sect or the Flying Flower Island, it will still be the 6 great sections. However, you will never have the chance to see a high-quality sword again, and you will never have the chance to hear a lecture from a mighty figure, and you will never have the channels to get answers from them. Is this the result you want? Everyone was dumbfounded when they heard this. That's right, was this the result they wanted? If the sword technique conference was no longer held, wouldn't they become the ultimate victims? Hence, everyone glared angrily at the hecklers, completely forgetting that they were also accomplices in the past. The triangular-eyed old man did not expect Yun Chujio to turn the situation around so quickly. Just as he was about to say something, Yun Chujia's clear voice rang out again. San Jiaoyan, I'm sorry, but I have to apologize. By the way, this hypocrite is still talking about how I killed He Hongchuan yesterday. I was not willing to defend myself, but now I can only say it. If He Hongchuan did not have the intention to kill me first, I would not have killed him. But he wanted to kill me, and I still endured it. That is not kindness in my heart, that is stupidity. As for who said that they didn't see He Hongchuan's intention to kill me, then go back and practice your eyes, or else you'll embarrass yourself. Come, those who didn't see that he wanted to kill me, raise your hands and let me see. The corners of everyone's eyes twitched violently. You already said that you didn't see that it was embarrassing, who else would be stupid enough to raise their hands? Seeing that no one raised their hands, Yun Chujo nodded in satisfaction and said, "All right, now that the truth has been revealed and our internal conflicts have been resolved, it's time to deal with this hypocrite. Come, hypocrite, tell me, what are you trying to do by going through so much trouble? I just said so much, but you didn't say a word. It's obvious that you have a guilty conscience. Do people like you not like to see others being good? Do you have the red-eye disease? If you have a disease, you should take your medicine. Don't come out and bark, or else you'll get beaten up." The old man with the triangular eyes was so angry that he almost died. How could he not have anything to say? He clearly wanted to speak a few times, but he was suppressed by Yun Chujia's swift speed and clear voice. "San Jiaoyan." With a gloomy face, he said coldly, "Yun Chujo, you've said so much. After all, your nameless sword sect is still bullying others. Everyone is just afraid of revenge, so they don't dare to make a sound." Yun Chujo curled the corner of her mouth. I've explained it clearly and with sufficient evidence. You actually said that I'm bullying others? It seems that you're being unreasonable. Since you said so, fine, then I'm bullying others with my power. I'm just vicious. What do you want to do? Do you want to eliminate evil for the people? Come on, if you don't dare to make a move, you'll be a green-furred turtle. The kind of green-furred turtle. The veins on the triangular-eyed old man's forehead were popping up. Obviously, he was extremely angry. He wished that he could kill Yun Chujo with a slap. However, there was still Elder Jia who was eyeing him like a tiger watching its prey. The triangular-eyed old man gritted his teeth and said coldly, "Yun Chujo, let's wait and see. Justice is on the side. There will always be a time for you to get your retribution." Yun Chujo sneered, "The law of heaven is clear. If there really is such a thing as retribution, then it should be a heavenly lightning strike to kill a red-eyed green-furred turtle like you." Boom! A heavenly lightning strike descended from the sky. Chapter 42-48 was about to vomit blood from He Xinjia's words. Even in his dreams, the triangular-eyed old man did not expect to be struck by lightning. He was struck squarely by it. Although he did not suffer any serious injuries, he was clearly stunned by the shock. The scene was deathly silent. At this moment, everyone was thinking, is this Yun Chujo a jinx? Why was the triangular-eyed old man struck by lightning with just a casual remark from San Jiaoyan? Or could it be that the triangular-eyed old man really had bad intentions, so he suffered retribution? Yun Chujo was also very confused. Okay. Her jinx skill was sometimes effective and sometimes not. After careful calculation, it seemed that she had not appeared for a long time. Today, she actually reappeared in the martial arts world. However, what was the key point for her jinx skill to trigger? However, this guy would naturally not let go of such a good opportunity. He immediately put on a swindler's expression and said, "Hypocrite, I advise you to turn over a new leaf in the future. Otherwise, I'm afraid it won't be a bolt of lightning. You might even be turned into ashes." The triangular-eyed old man was shocked, afraid, and hateful at the same time. For a moment, he was actually unable to say a word. He gave Yun Chujo a vicious glance and jumped off the high platform. Everyone came back to their senses and gave him another round of sarcasm. What hypocrite! What green-eyed turtle! The triangular-eyed old man only felt his head buzzing. His chest felt stuffy and he spat out a mouthful of blood. After swallowing a few pills, he left in a hurry. Seeing this, Yun Chujo said to Elder Jia with a smile, "Elder Jia, please continue with your lecture." Give me back my chair. It's quite expensive." Elder Jia, he was convinced that Yun Chujo was stingy to this extent. However, he was convinced by Yun Chujia's eloquence. Just by relying on her eloquence, she was able to make the arrogant San Jiaoyan old man vomit blood. It was simply heaven-defying. Yun Chujo put away her chair and jumped off the high platform. The crowd automatically made way for her. On one hand, she was a little embarrassed. On the other hand, it was because of the heavenly lightning just now. If she provoked this guy, she would casually make another heavenly lightning bolt. But there was nowhere to cry. Yun Chujo jumped to the wonton stall. She said with a smile, "Old man, my wontons aren't cold, right? How is it? I came back pretty quickly, right? If I didn't clean up the scum who scolded me halfway, I would definitely be faster than now." The old couple had just been watching the show and had no time to cook wontons. Now that they heard her question, they quickly began to cook wontons. The old man praised Yun Chujo and said, "It's strange. Why is the person from yesterday and today so bold? In the past, no one dared to offend the 6 great sects so brazenly." The speaker had no intention of listening. Yun Chujo frowned, then stood up and left in a hurry. The old couple looked baffled and could only stare at Yun Chuji's back in a daze. Yun Chujo soon arrived at the VIP seats. She didn't avoid it and said to Master Ouyang directly, "Master Ouyang, I feel that something is unusual. Whether it was He Hongchuan yesterday or San Jiaoyan today, they were not just looking for trouble. Could they have been ordered by someone?" Master Ouyang and the others were also a little suspicious. The blood-devouring sword that He Hongchuan had brought out wasn't an ordinary sword. If he didn't have a motive, he wouldn't have brought it out so casually, and he wouldn't have cut Elder Duema's treasured sword in half. There was also that San Jiaoyan elder. He was obviously inciting everyone to target the Nameless Sword sect and the Flying Flower Island, and even the 6 great sections. Could they really have been instigated by someone? Chapter 42-49, Humiliation. Master Ouyang, Island Master Qi, and the others discussed for a while before sending people to investigate the whereabouts of San Jiaoyan while searching for some clues. However, they didn't obtain any results. Everyone thought, could it be that they were thinking too much? The next few days were all sword techniques competitions and nothing abnormal happened. Everyone put the previous matters aside for the time being. He Xinjiu was not the least bit interested in sword techniques competitions. On the last day of the Sword Technique Conference, Xiaoyu went up the high platform with full confidence. Xiaoyu won 3 rounds in a row and was defeated by Zhuang Hong in the end. Zhuang Hong had been very unlucky recently. The last time in the Bewilderment Shadow Forest, he was badly injured by the group of iron-armored blood lizards. This time, he was finally able to hold his head up high and was naturally very smug. Although Master Ouyang was very dissatisfied with Zhuang Hong's arrogance, seeing that he had won a few rounds in a row, his mood was still pretty good. No matter what, it was good that he had won. At this moment, a middle-aged man leaped onto the competition stage. Zhuang Hong sized up the middle-aged man a few times. He saw that the middle-aged man was at the 3rd layer of the nirvana of the spirit, while he was at the 4th layer of the nirvana of the spirit. His gaze revealed some disdain. "You really want to compete with me? Your spiritual power is inferior to mine, and your swordsmanship can't be compared to mine. I advise you to just admit defeat," Zhuang Hong said arrogantly. The middle-aged man revealed a hint of a cold smile. "If you can't beat me in a fight, then we'll talk about it after we fight." Zhuang Hong curled his lips. "Hmpich, since you're asking for humiliation, then I'll grant you your wish." The two of them drew their swords and engaged in a fierce battle. In the beginning, Zhuang Hong had the absolute advantage, forcing the middle-aged man to the edge of the high platform several times. However, the situation quickly reversed, and the middle-aged man's sword technique suddenly became sharp. No matter what moves Zhuang Hong used, he was firmly restrained by the other party and soon fell into a disadvantageous position. The arrogance on Zhuang Hong's face had turned into panic. It shouldn't be. He used the space-shattering sword technique. Although it couldn't compare to the nameless sword technique that the elders practiced, it was still one of the best sword techniques. How could it be suppressed by the other party? Master Ouyang's expression changed slightly. He knew that Zhuang Hong was bound to lose. To be honest, although the middle-aged man's sword technique attainment wasn't bad, it wasn't that great. If Elder Duanmu and the others were to make a move, they could easily defeat him. But the problem was that the sword technique conference didn't allow the elders to step onto the stage. The Nameless Sword sect had lost a lot of face this time. Zhuang Hong, as the successor disciple of the sect leader, had actually been defeated by a rogue cultivator. If this news were to spread out, he would have no face to face anyone in the future. A moment later, Zhuang Hong's right leg was stabbed by the middle-aged man, and he directly knelt on one leg on the stage. The middle-aged man then stabbed Zhuang Hong's left leg, and Zhuang Hong firmly knelt in front of the middle-aged man. The successor disciple of the Nameless Sword sect leader is only a so-so. You've lost, go down. That person said disdainfully, and did not make another move. Zhuang Hong was angry, embarrassed, and a little unwilling. When he thought of the embarrassing situation he would face when he returned to the sect, he almost wanted to die. Master Ouyang's expression was very ugly. That person deliberately stabbed Zhuang Hong's legs, which was to humiliate Zhuang Hong and the Nameless Sword sect. Although he was very angry, he could not leave Zhuang Hong on the stage and ignore him. He immediately got Chu Fang and the others to help Zhuang Hong down from the stage. When the middle-aged man saw Zhuang Hong being helped down from the stage, he said coldly, "Is there anyone else who wants to compete? Even the successor disciple of the Nameless Sword sect master is no match for me. I reckon that no one would dare to come up and challenge me, right? If not, the champion of this sword technique conference will be me." Chapter 4250 I am the last disciple of the master of the sect. Although Zhuang Hong was arrogant, he was one of the best among the successive disciples. Since he had already lost, the others would naturally not go up and suffer. Wan Qingba's spiritual power was higher than Zhuang Hong's, but he did not come this time, so none of the other successive disciples went up on the stage. Master Ouyang's face was so gloomy that it was about to drip. Although Xiaoyu from the Flying Flower Island had lost, the Flying Flower Island wasn't famous for sword arts, so it didn't matter. However, their Nameless Sword sect was different. It could be imagined that if such news was spread out, their Nameless Sword sect would simply make people laugh their heads off. Hei Xinjiu, who was watching the show at the wonton stall, rolled her eyes. A sinister smile suddenly appeared on her face, and she hopped out of the wonton stall. Yun Chuzhou squeezed through the crowd and arrived at the bottom of the stage. Just as the host was about to announce the results of the competition, she hurriedly shouted, "Wait! Wait! I want to compete with him." Master Ouyang and the others were dumbfounded when they saw Yun Chuzhou step onto the stage. Wasn't she just rushing up to get beaten up? Even Zhuang Hong was no match for that middle-aged man. How could a small fry like her defeat the strong? That middle-aged man sized up Yun Chuzhou and said, "Even the successor disciple of your Nameless Sword sect master is no match for me. You, a trash at the second level of the spirit realm, want to compete with me?" Yun Chuzhou said with a smile, "So what if I'm at the second level of the spirit realm? Although I'm at the second level of the spirit realm, I'm still the successor disciple of the sect master. Moreover, I'm the last disciple. The sect master's sword technique has already been passed down to me. That Zhuang Hong is just a decoration." Master Ouyang almost fell to the ground when he heard that. When did he take her in as a successor disciple? Closed-door disciple. Nonsense. Shameless. Island Master Qi was also stunned. He looked at the stiff-faced Master Ouyang curiously. "Master Ouyang, did you really take that Yun Chuzhou in as a closed-door disciple? If that's the case, you can't take in other disciples in the future." Master Ouyang's heart was like a beeping dog. What bullshit last disciple? He had never taken her in at all, okay? However, he couldn't directly deny that Yun Chuzhou was a disciple of the Nameless Sword sect and had told such a big lie in front of everyone. In the end, the Nameless Sword sect was still the one who lost face. After all, that little girl was famous for being thick-skinned. Moreover, he still had a sliver of hope in his heart. If Yun Chuzhou could really defeat that middle-aged man, she could announce to the public that she was his disciple and save some face. Therefore, he pretended not to hear Island Master Qi's words and did not say anything. In this way, he could attack, retreat, and defend. He would wait until the end of the competition to see the result. On the stage, He Xinjiu saw that Master Ouyang did not jump out to deny her words. She was very happy in her heart. She had been worried that the old man, Master Ouyang, would not let her go. Now, she would kill him first and report to him later. Once the rice is cooked, the rice is cooked. Zhuang Hong, who was recuperating, heard Yun Chujia's words and was about to retort when Chu Fang, who was standing next to him, reacted quickly and knocked him out with a hand knife. Elder Gu saw everything clearly, and the corner of his eyes twitched. This disciple of his had always followed the rules and never done anything out of line. Now, he actually dared to plot against Zhuang Hong. He must have been led astray by that little girl, Yun Chujiu. The middle-aged man on the competition stage was also shocked. However, he quickly said with disdain, "Is there no one left in your nameless sword sect, or is your sect master blind? He actually took in a good-for-nothing like you as his last disciple." Chapter 42-51 Sword Genius. I'm in a good mood now, so I won't argue with you. Come, let's do it. I'll poke a few holes in your body, and then you can go back for dinner. Yun Chujiu smiled like a flower. There was nothing she could do, she was in such a good mood. The middle-aged man snorted. You're boasting shamelessly. Since you're courting death, then you can't blame me. As soon as the middle-aged man finished his words, the sword in his hand stabbed towards Yun Chujiu. Yo, you're really shameless. You actually attacked without saying anything. Fortunately, as the last disciple of the sect leader, I didn't give it to you for free. Otherwise, I would have really fallen into your trap, He Xinjiu said with a smile as she dodged. This guy's heart was black. She deliberately mentioned the matter of the last disciple time and time again. Even if it was fake, it had to become real. The middle-aged man naturally did not know the twists and turns here. He had only one goal, and that was to kill Yun Chujiu. Therefore, his sword moves became more and more fierce, even more fierce than when he was dealing with Zhuang Hong. Although Yun Chujiu was laughing and laughing on the surface, she did not dare to relax the slightest bit in her heart. If she were to fight seriously, her spiritual power was too low and she had almost no chance of winning. She had to find another way to do it. She remembered that when she was competing with Liao Tao, she had defeated her opponent at the critical moment by using her sword intent. Now that she had mastered 3 layers of sword intent, if she could successfully stack them, she could totally trick her opponent. However, before that, she had to try the slow sword intent that she had just comprehended. Thinking of this, Yun Chujia's movement technique was still very fast, but her sword moves had become slow. There was almost no movement to attack, and she had been relying on her movement technique to dodge. The crowd below the stage discussed animatedly, although this Yun Chujia's movement technique is exceptionally fast, but after dodging and dodging like this, the final result is still certain to be a loss. TSK, a second level and third level of Lingji can't be compared at all, okay? I don't know how the nameless sword sect's Master Ouyang took in such a trash disciple, but I've never heard that she was Master Ouyang's last disciple before. This is still hard to understand. Such a useless disciple, how could Master Ouyang have the face to be someone else? If this Yun Chujiu wasn't the last disciple of Master Ouyang, how could she act so arrogantly? I heard that she used the talisman to blow up many successive disciples. Master Ouyang's heart was on fire in the VIP seats. On one hand, he was angry because of Yun Chujia's shamelessness. On the other hand, he hoped that Yun Chujiu could create a miracle. But could she really do it? As he watched, Master Ouyang's face revealed a shocked expression. He saw that Yun Chujia's slow thrusts were all flaws of the middle-aged man. Not only that, Yun Chujia's body was already surrounded by sword intent. Could this be the legendary slow sword intent that was difficult to comprehend? At the same time, the others also realized this. Elder Gu exclaimed, "It's the slow sword intent." She actually comprehended the slow sword intent. Heavens, this little girl had already comprehended the chaotic sword intent and the fast sword intent. She actually comprehended the slow sword intent in such a short period of time. Doesn't that mean that she has already grasped 3 types of sword intent? She really is a genius in sword arts. Sect Master, as expected, your eyes are as sharp as torches. Elder Duanmu was so depressed that he wanted to vomit blood. He had clearly taken a liking to this little girl first, alright? However, she was still unable to infuse her sword intent into her body, so she had not accepted her as a disciple. If she had known this would happen, she would have struck first. Chapter 4252 was the first place Elder Duanmu remembered that he had once defeated Yunchujo. He said that the fast sword intent and the slow sword intent were opposites. It was impossible for a person to master both sword intents at the same time. He suddenly felt his face hurt. However, although Master Ouyang and the others were surprised by Yunchujia's talent, they still felt that there was almost no hope for her to win. After all, the difference in spiritual power was too big. The middle-aged man thought the same. Although he was surprised that Yunchujo had mastered the slow sword intent, he was not too worried. He felt that it was only a matter of time before she won. As expected, as time passed, Yunchujia's movement began to slow down. She could not even maintain her sword intent. She was forced to retreat by the middle-aged man. At this moment, Yunchujia's forehead was full of sweat. She began to gasp for breath. Anyone would think that she was already at the end of her rope and would be defeated soon. At this moment, Yunchujo lost her balance and fell to the ground. The middle-aged man's eyes flashed with viciousness as he stabbed the sword in his hand towards Yunchujo. Master Ouyang and the others stood up in shock. Even if they wanted to save her, it was too late. It was over. Even if the little girl didn't die, she would probably be seriously injured. Elder Dongfang's eyes flashed. He remembered the last time when Yunchujo and Liao Tao fought, it was very similar to this scene. At that time, Yunchujo used the superposition of sword intent to block Liao Tao's attack. This time, it should be possible. However, he didn't know if she could superposition 3 layers of sword intent. At this moment, the middle-aged man's sword tip was only 3 feet away from Yunchujo, but it was blocked by a layer of sword intent that seemed to have substance. The middle-aged man's lips curled into a cold smile. A mere sword intent still wanted to block him? Dream on. He increased his strength, and the sword tip quickly pierced through the sword intent. Just when he thought he was about to succeed, the sword tip was blocked by another layer of sword intent, and it was even stronger than the previous sword intent. His face revealed a stunned expression. What was going on? Just as he was stunned, he stumbled. Before he could react, Yunchujia's sword had already pierced his left chest. Yunchujo did not use a large kitchen knife in this competition. Although the large kitchen knife was powerful, it was too short. She was at a disadvantage when fighting with the sword wielder, so she casually took out a sword. The middle-aged man's reaction was fast enough. He jumped out of Yunchujia's attack range almost the instant he was stabbed by Yunchujo. Although he was unwilling, he was already injured. Even if he fought again, he would not be Yunchujia's opponent. Therefore, he said coldly, I admit defeat. We will meet again. After the middle-aged man finished speaking, he did not wait for Yunchujo to reply. He directly jumped down the high platform and squeezed out of the crowd to leave in a hurry. Yunchujo wanted to go down the platform to chase after Sen Jiaoyan because she felt that this person was very likely to be on the same side as the old man with the triangular eyes. However, she was stopped by the host. The host asked if there were still people who wanted to challenge her. If there weren't any, the first place in this sword technique conference would be Yunchujo. The onlookers shook their heads like rattle drums. Although this Yunchujia's spiritual power wasn't that great, her swordsmanship was indeed not bad. Most importantly, she had a belly full of evil water. It was better not to provoke her. Moreover, she was the last disciple of Master Ouyang. With this guy's character, if he offended her, he might not necessarily take revenge. In the end, He Xinjiu became the champion of this year's sword technique conference. Chapter 4253 confirmed her identity. He Xinjiu also felt that she was pretty awesome. She was originally just a bystander, but in the end, she became the champion. Don't you think it's infuriating? At this time, Zhuang Hong had already woken up. When he saw Yun Chujiu, who was smiling like a flower on the stage, he almost spat out a mouthful of blood. It was one thing for Yun Chujiu to steal his limelight, but she actually shamelessly claimed that she was Master's last disciple. He would never let her have her way. Thus, he shouted in exasperation, "All of you have been deceived by her. She is not my Master's last disciple at all, she is lying." Zhuang Hong's words immediately caused an uproar, and Master Ouyang nearly fainted from anger. Originally, it would have been fine if no one brought this matter up again. When the time came, he would pretend to be muddle-headed, and Yun Chujiu, a mere disciple, could not really force him. But now, this fool actually shouted out again. Wasn't this forcing him to admit it? Not admit it? What a joke. Yun Chujiu finally managed to pick up the reputation of the broken nameless sword sect. Could it be that he wanted to slap himself in the face? Thus, before Yun Chujiu could say anything, Master Ouyang said coldly, "Everyone, Yun Chujiu is indeed my last disciple." As for Zhuang Hong, he was injured so badly that he lost his mind, so he spouted nonsense. "Everyone, don't take it to heart." Zhuang Hong couldn't believe his ears. The master of the sect had really accepted Yun Chujiu as his disciple. Under the huge blow, he fainted again. On the stage, Yun Chujiu was very happy. Old man Ouyang had confirmed her identity in public, and she had become the successor disciple of the sect master. Beautiful. However, when this fellow saw that the prize was only a few bottles of pills and some spirit stones, he was a little disappointed. However, it was a waste of time anyway, so he just accepted it. After the awards ceremony, this year's sword technique conference came to an end. Yun Chujiu jumped in front of sect master Ouyang and bowed to her freshly baked master. "Master, little Jiu pays her respects to you." Sect master Ouyang's heart was like a muttering dog. He had heard of people who were forced to accept disciples, but this was the first time he had heard of someone who was forced to be a master. However, under the watchful eyes of everyone, he couldn't say anything. He could only squeeze out an amiable smile and say, "Disciple, you performed well today. Your master is very satisfied." Yun Chujiu tilted her head and said with a smile, "Master, since you are so satisfied, shouldn't you reward me with some good things?" Sect master Ouyang, he knew that he couldn't accept this disciple. He had just accepted it, and now he was asking for something from him. Wouldn't he have to plunder all the good things from me in the future? He wanted to not give it to her, but he couldn't keep his pride. He could only take out a low-grade defensive immortal artifact and give it to He Xinjiu. When He Xinjiu saw that it was a low-grade immortal artifact, his smile became even brighter. He followed behind Master Ouyang and called him Master sweetly. Elder Duanmu felt sour in his heart. He was so regretful that his intestines turned green. However, since things had come to this point, there was no point in regretting. Yun Chujiu originally wanted to greet the old couple who sold wontons, but the old couple was probably worried that there would be too many people at the end of the conference, so they had already packed up and left. This fellow had no choice but to give up. As it was close to evening, most of the people decided to set off the next morning. After arriving at the inn and having dinner, Yun Chujiu had just entered her room when Chu Fang came in with a distressed expression. He even specially locked the door from the inside. Yun Chujiu looked puzzled. "Senior brother Chu, what's the matter?" Chapter 4254, Seniority Chu Fang only sat on the chair, sighing and not saying a word. Yun Chujiu could not help but laugh. "Senior brother Chu, you came here to sigh. If you have nothing else to do, then leave. I'm still waiting for a rest." Chu Fang's mouth opened and closed, he gritted his teeth and said, "Junior sister Yun, Island Master Qi has already spoken. He firmly disagrees with the matter between her and me, saying that she can only marry a disciple of the Flying Flower Island. Moreover, he also said that if he finds out that we are meeting privately in the future, he will expel her from the Flying Flower Island and not acknowledge her as his disciple. Although Yun Chujiu knew that Island Master Qi looked down on Chu Fang, she did not expect that he would be so unyielding this time. It seemed that he had made up his mind. Seeing that Yun Chujiu did not speak, Chu Fang's heart became even colder. If junior sister Yun could not do anything about it, then there was really nothing he could do. About this matter of yours, you can't be too hasty. You have to wait for the right time. Besides, he said that you're not allowed to meet in private. Then next time, you can meet openly. That old thing will die of anger. Yun Chujiu said with a grin. Chu Fang, how can this be? Seeing Chu Fang's hopeless look, Yun Chujiu couldn't help but laugh. Senior brother Chu, don't worry. As long as you coax Little Moon to be happy, that Island Master Qi won't be a problem at all. Sooner or later, he'll agree to your matter. Hearing this, Chu Fang heaved a sigh of relief in his heart. Anyway, there was still a long way to go, so he would slowly think of a way in the future. Chu Fang temporarily put this matter aside and forced a smile. Junior sister Yun, I haven't congratulated you yet. You'll be the sect master's last disciple from now on. Yun Chujiu said smugly, that's easy to say, that's easy to say. If there's anything in the future, I'll take care of you. However, I found a problem. Should I call Zhuang Hong martial uncle or senior brother in the future? Isn't the way we address each other in the sect a little chaotic? Chu Fang was stunned, but after thinking about it, it was true. The successive disciples of the Nameless Sword sect were not from the same batch of disciples, so they were all successive disciples with different seniority. However, most elders only accepted one disciple, and even if they accepted 2 disciples, they were all from the same batch of disciples. There was really no example like Zhuang Hong and Yun Chujiu. Previously, everyone had called them randomly, and no one had noticed. Moreover, the elders were addressed as so-and-so elders, so it did not involve the issue of seniority. Now that Yun Chujiu said this, it did not seem too good. For example, if he addressed Zhuang Hong as Uncle Master Zhuang Hong, wouldn't Zhuang Hong have the same seniority as his master, Elder Gu? It was simply a mess. Yun Chujiu curled her lips. It's not that I want to say it, but my master is very busy every day. Naturally, he would not think of such small matters. In the future, I will reluctantly help him. I will handle some of the sect's matters. Chu Fang, so after talking for so long, her ultimate goal was to divide the power. However, it was too difficult. Not to mention other things, the sect wouldn't let a female disciple take over the power. No matter how bad junior sister Yun was, she probably wouldn't be able to use it. Just as Chu Fang was thinking. Yun Chujiu said sneakily, let's not talk about this first. Senior brother Chu, tell me, how did you hook up with Little Moon? Did you hook up with her after I went missing? Tell me. Chu Fang's face immediately turned red and he mumbled, no, there's nothing to tell. Senior brother Chu, it's not right for you to do this. If you don't tell me some details, how can I help you convince Island Master Qi? Since you don't want to tell me, then fine, I won't care about your matters anymore. He Xinjiu pouted and said. Chapter 42-55 Ex-fiancé, you're here. Chu Fang saw that Yun Chujiu was about to give up, so he quickly said, I'll talk, I'll talk. After you disappeared that day, Chu Fang and Yun Chujiu began to tell the story of his relationship with Xiao Yu. On the other side, Master Ouyang and the others were drinking tea on the first floor and discussing the sword technique conference. At this moment, a man in white walked in from the door. Master Ouyang and the others were shocked and stood up. There was no other reason. The aura of the person who came was too strong. Even they felt a great sense of danger. Master Ouyang and the others did not have the time to look at the man's appearance. The man's cold voice sounded, I am Yun Chujiu's fiancé. Where is she? Everyone was dumbfounded. What the hell? Yun Chuji's fiancé. He was Yun Chuji's fiancé. In the past, they had heard that little girl brag about how awesome her fiancé was. At that time, everyone thought that she was bragging. They thought that she was simply stupid to give up Tower Master Luochen for her so-called fiancé. However, now that they saw it, yes, they were stupid. Although Tower Master Luochen was extraordinary, the gap between him and the man in front of him was still very obvious. How should they put it? The aura of the man in front of them was his own aura. And the aura of Tower Master Luochen was more or less borrowed from the power of the 9 pavilions. Di Baiming's heart sank when he saw that this bunch of idiots in front of him actually didn't make a sound. Could it be that these people all knew about Little Nine and that little sweetheart? So they deliberately hid it? When Di Baiming thought of this, the aura on his body became even more threatening. Master Ouyang's forehead couldn't help but sweat profusely. He hurriedly said, This young master, little Jiu is upstairs. I will bring you up now. When Di Baiming heard this, he nodded slightly. The aura on his body was slightly restrained. Master Ouyang immediately led Di Baiming upstairs with a bitter expression. Elder Ji Yu and the others followed behind him. Di Baiming frowned but didn't say anything. Master Ouyang and the others hadn't even reached the door of Yun Chuji's room when they heard Yun Chuzhou giggle, Senior Brother Chu, you are quite tender at the critical moment. You are much better than my scumbag fiancé. Master Ouyang, disciple, ancestor, are you unlucky? Why did you have to say such words at this moment? Your scumbag fiancé is going to freeze your newly made master into an ice sculpture. At this moment, Chu Fang said with a smile, Junior sister Yun, it's not that senior brother is boasting, but at the crucial moment, senior brother is much more reliable than your fiancé. 2 words flashed through Master Ouyang's mind, courting death. This Chu Fang was courting death with his strength. Di Baiming's face was frighteningly gloomy. He stretched out his hand to push the door, but it didn't budge. It was actually locked inside. A certain honored master couldn't suppress his anger anymore. A man and a woman had even locked the door. What on earth were they doing? Bang! A certain someone smashed the door with his palm. He Xinjiu and Chu Fang, who were chatting and laughing inside, looked at the door in confusion. Yun Chuzhou looked at Di Baiming's gloomy face that looked like a dead man and swallowed her saliva. She stretched out her claws and said weakly, Ex-fiancé, you're here. Ex-fiancé. A cold smile appeared on the corner of a certain someone's mouth. He ignored Yun Chuzhou and looked at Chu Fang, who had a dumbfounded look on his face. What the hell was that pointy mouth and monkey cheeks? Putting everything else aside, there was something wrong with the name. It was both Chu and Fang. Was it gay or straight? Chapter 4256, My little darling Chu Fang was first intimidated by Di Baiming's pressure, and second, he felt goosebumps when Di Baiming looked at him like he was looking at a dead person. His legs could not help but go weak, and he staggered and almost fell to the ground. Yun Chuzhou subconsciously went to help him, but before her hand touched Chu Fang, the poor kid, flew out of the back window with a whoosh. Elder Gu grinned. This was the 2nd floor. Although he was a cultivator, his stupid disciple was scared silly. He might have forgotten to ride his sword. Yun Chuzhou glared at Di Baiming. What are you doing? Why did you slap senior brother Chu away for no reason? Are you sick again? Or did you not take your medicine when you went out? Di Baiming looked at her deeply, then grabbed her waist and jumped out of the 2nd floor window. He Xinjiu dared to say that just now because of the presence of Master Ouyang and the others. Seeing that Di Baiming was going to take her away, she immediately wailed, Master, help. Master, you can't just ignore your precious disciple. Master, you can't just leave her to die. Master Ouyang, huh? Why did his ears suddenly stop working? His eyes also stopped working. He couldn't hear or see anything. Elder Duanmu and the others didn't move either. What a joke. Why would they get involved in the affairs of a couple? Besides, if they got involved, they would be tortured to death. Unless they had water in their heads, they would only ask for trouble. Speaking of which, Yun Chujia's fiancé was so powerful. How come they had never heard of him before? It was really strange. On the other side, He Xinjiu was brought out of the city by a certain deity. On the way, she even piqued Kufang, who was badly bruised. Di Baiming pointed at the miserable Chu Fang and asked, "Is he the little darling you mentioned?" Yun Chujiu shrunk her neck and looked at the dumbfounded Chu Fang with a look of reluctance. She said, "No, he is the little darling of the little moon. It has nothing to do with me." Chu Fang finally felt blessed. He felt that he was most likely misunderstood as an adulterer. He quickly shouted, "Yes, yes, I like Xiao Yu from the Flying Flower Island." Why would I like junior sister Yun? She is ruthless and full of evil intentions. If I marry her, I'm afraid that she will kill me without anyone knowing. Yun Chujiu gritted her teeth. The guilt in her heart was instantly fed to the dogs. Di Baiming glanced at Chu Fang. Seeing that what he said did not seem to be a lie, he snorted coldly and waved his sleeve. Scram! The pitiful Chu Fang flew out again. Fortunately, he had experience this time. Halfway through, he thought of riding a sword and disappeared without a trace. "Where are you going?" Di Baiming said coldly. He Xinjiu, who was about to escape, touched her nose guiltily. "I don't want to go anywhere." Why are you looking for me?" "Who's little darling?" Little darling is, Yun Chujiu planned to take out one of the dumb cubs from the spiritual beast bag to fill in the numbers. However, those dumb cubs kneeled on the ground and kowtowed non-stop. "Little fairy, master, please spare us. If we go out, we will die without a complete corpse." Yun Chujiu, "Good, very good, these ingrates." Yun Chujiu wanted to release the puppets again. This time, even those drifters squeezed out a word, "No." Yun Chujiu, this fellow really had no choice. In the end, he took out the big black pot, rubbed his hands, and laughed dryly. "This is my little darling. As the saying goes, you are my heart, you are my liver, you are my big black pot." Chapter 4257, You Can Call Me Black-Eyed Wolf. Di Baiming looked at the big black pot and sneered, "It's your little darling?" He Xinjiu braced herself and said, "Yes, I named it Little Darling. It's always called Big Black Pot." Di Baiming's voice became colder. "Even if it's Little Darling, what about your ex-fiancé?" Ex-fiancé. He Xinjiu kicked the pebble on the ground with the tip of her foot and stammered, not knowing how to explain it. Di Baiming looked at Yun Chujia's rolling eyes and did not rush her. He wanted to hear how she wanted to smooth things over in the end. He Xinjiu finally thought of an excuse and said slyly, "Ex-fiancé, that's right, you are my ex-fiancé. Because in my heart, you are already my husband, so naturally, you are not my fiancé." He Xinjiu secretly gave herself a 360-degree like that had no blind spots. This excuse was absolutely flawless. Although Di Baiming knew that Yun Chujiu was giving him an excuse, he had to admit that when he heard the word husband, his heart felt weak. However, when he thought of the short time and poor skill on the recording stone, his face immediately darkened. He squeezed out a sentence from between his teeth, "Then how do you explain the short time and poor skill?" He Xinjiu shrunk her neck and cursed in her heart, "Humph, if I didn't say that, would you have run over here without any hesitation?" Besides, he had never tried it before. Maybe it was really the short time and poor technique. Of course, only a fool would say what he was thinking. He blinked his eyes and said, "Short time. Poor technique? I mean, when you massaged my shoulders, not only was the time short, but your technique was also poor. Is there a problem?" Di Baiming was furious. Massaging his shoulders? Then, how do you explain the last sentence that failed to make you pregnant after so many years? It's not easy to explain. If I wanted to be pregnant, I would be pregnant too. How could it be a baby? I've heard of piglets and puppies, but I've never heard of human babies. Di Biming sneered. He had finally seen what it meant to lie with his eyes wide open. Even if you can explain the first part, how do you explain the breakup fee and the ingrate at the end? Hei Xinjiu really could not find any excuses, she simply started to act shamelessly. I'm just playing with you. If you're angry, you can call me an ingrate. Even if you call me a black-eyed wolf, I won't be angry. It's just a title, what's the big deal? Di Biming looked at Yun Chujia's scoundrel-like appearance. Even if he gritted his teeth in hatred, there was nothing he could do. Beat her? Of course, he couldn't bear to scold her. It didn't seem to be of any use to this little scoundrel. He couldn't hit her, he couldn't scold her, so he could only use the old method, and kiss her. Hei Xinjiu was dizzy from the kiss. 2 words flashed through her mind. Done. When the two of them were kissing passionately, Di Biming suddenly covered Yun Chujia's mouth. The two of them hid behind a bush. Hei Xinjia's face was red, and she looked at Di Biming in confusion. Di Biming's throat tightened, and he closed his eyes before he mouthed, "Someone is coming." Yun Chujio was stunned. Who would come here in the middle of the night? Yun Chujio looked out through the gap in the bush. After a while, she saw many masked men gathering in this direction. The leader said, "Search." Yun Chujio and Di Biming must be nearby. Yun Chujio captured them alive. Di Biming will kill them without mercy. Chapter 4258 was about Meilan Luli again. Yun Chujio was shocked. Who were these people? Why were they so familiar with her and the gigolo's whereabouts? Obviously, someone had tipped them off. The place where the two of them were hiding was not safe. They would probably be discovered soon. Di Biming's eyes flashed with a trace of sternness. He gave Yun Chujio a look, indicating for her to stay here. He went out to send them away. Although his spiritual power was suppressed in the towering sky continent, it was not a problem for him to take care of these people. Di Biming's figure suddenly flashed. The two people closest to the bushes had already been killed by him. With another flash, another 2 people fell to the ground. Following Di Biming's ghostly figure, there was soon a pile of corpses on the ground. Hei Xinjiu was speechless. Damn, the gigolo was getting more and more powerful. This was a killer weapon that would never fail. The leader obviously did not expect Di Biming's spiritual power to be so terrifying. He suddenly remembered something. He took out several items that were shimmering with a faint blue light from his storage ring and threw them at Di Biming, who was fighting. Di Biming used his palm wind to smash those items into pieces. However, the next moment, he knew that he had fallen into a trap. Di Biming felt that the spiritual power in his body was rapidly depleting. Moreover, the cold poison that had not relapsed for a long time had also relapsed. The person who was hurling at him was actually the blue marble. How did these people know that the blue marble was his weakness? Where did they get so many blue marble? Hei Xinjiu, who was hiding behind the bushes, secretly cried out. The pretty boy had been tricked. These masked men not only had high spiritual power, but there were also many of them. If the pretty boy had not been tricked, he could have easily taken care of these dregs. However, the current situation was too disadvantageous for them. Yun Chujio thought of this and was about to go out to help, but Di Biming flashed in front of her and held her waist. The aura on his body suddenly soared, and he released an ice dragon to repel the masked men's attack. Then, he brought Yun Chujio and rushed towards the direction of Azure Cloud City. There were cultivators from the 6 sects gathered in Azure Cloud City. These masked men would definitely not dare to follow them in. Therefore, as long as they entered Azure Cloud City, they would be temporarily safe. Yun Chujio saw that Di Biming's face was getting paler and paler. There were even ice shards appearing on his hair. She knew that Di Biming's cold poison was acting up again. She hated those masked men to death. She kept throwing talismans at them, regardless of whether they were high-level talismans or low-level talismans. Sacks after sacks of talismans were thrown out. Those masked men were unlucky. The few people who were chasing at the front were blown to pieces. Although the people at the back were on guard and avoided the talismans, they also slowed down and watched as Dai Baiming and Yun Chuzhou entered the Yunsang city. The leader gritted his teeth. There was a large group of cultivators in Yunsang city now. Even if they chased after them, they would not gain anything. Dai Baiming had already fallen into the trap anyway. There were many other ways to kill him. Hence, he waved his hand and left with the masked men. Yun Chuzhou saw that the people did not chase after them and heaved a sigh of relief. However, when she saw Dai Baiming beside her, her heart could not help but sink. Dai Baiming's body was already covered in a layer of ice, and his spiritual power level was dropping rapidly. It had even dropped to the spiritual power level. She could not care about anything else. She took out a rolling pin and smashed the ice on Dai Baiming's body. Then, she was going to cut her wrist and use her blood to help Dai Baiming resist the cold poison. Chapter 42-59, Are you injured? Unexpectedly, Dai Baiming suddenly opened his eyes and said with great effort, No need. I can hold it. Hei Xinjiu saw that he was still stubborn at this time, so she angrily gave him a rolling pin. Unexpectedly, Dai Baiming wanted to stand up and stay away from her so that she wouldn't insist on feeding him blood. Coincidentally, the rolling pin landed on Dai Baiming's forehead. Dai Baiming was already at the end of his tether. This rolling pin became the straw that broke the camel's back, and he passed out. Yun Chuzhou, was she trying to murder her husband? However, passing out was just the right time to prevent him from refusing to drink the blood. Yun Chuzhou was about to draw her blood when she saw Dai Baiming's body emitting a dazzling light. Then, she saw a small silver snake on the ground. It was a small silver snake that was frozen stiff. Yun Chuzhou was stunned for a moment before she understood. Dai Baiming's spiritual power had soared for a moment before he managed to get rid of those masked men. He must have used a secret technique, so the side effect was that he had turned into a small silver snake again. However, this was also good. At least she could bring him along with her so that he wouldn't attract any attention. At the same time, she could save his life. She didn't believe that those masked men would dare to openly oppose the nameless sword sect. Yun Chuzhou thought of this and looked at the frozen silver snake. She felt a little troubled. She could not set fire to it, right? In the end, she gritted her teeth and stuffed the silver snake into her clothes. The bone-piercing chill made this fellow shiver. However, she saw that the effect was not bad, so she could only shiver as she walked towards the inn. The inn was brightly lit. Master Ouyang and the others were obviously not asleep. Or rather, this group of old men were all waiting curiously for the follow-up. Elder Duanmu frowned and said, The little girl's fiancé looks too cold. He won't do anything to the little girl, right? Elder Dongfang smiled and said, Don't worry. That little girl is full of schemes. She will be fine. Elder Gu echoed, That's right. They are a young couple. It will be fine once the misunderstanding is resolved. Moreover, I don't think the little girl's fiancé is an unreasonable person. Chu Fang, whose face was badly bruised, Are you my own master? Your disciple has been thrown to such a state. And you are still speaking for him. As everyone was discussing, they saw Yun Chuzhou walking in from outside, trembling. Everyone thought to themselves, It seems that this little girl has been taught a good lesson. Otherwise, she wouldn't still be trembling in fear. Master Ouyang coughed lightly and asked, Little Nine, where's your fiancé? Yun Chuzhou squeezed out a smile and said, He has something to do and has to leave first. Well, if there's nothing else, I'll go back to my room first. Master Ouyang saw that she didn't look too good, so he waved his hand. Anyway, it wasn't an urgent matter, so it wouldn't be too late to ask tomorrow. At this time, Chu Fang cried out in surprise, Junior sister Yun, why is there blood on your clothes? Are you injured? Yun Chuzhou looked down in confusion and saw a small blood stain on her chest, and it was still spinning. She was shocked. Could it be that the gigolo had vomited blood? She did not have time to say anything and rushed back to her room. Yun Chujo closed the door and quickly took out the small silver snake from her clothes. It was still cold in her hands, but it was no longer frozen. Hei Shinjo saw that the small silver snake's nose was still bleeding. She was so angry that she threw the small silver snake directly onto the bed. A certain being who was bleeding from his nose could be considered to hate Chu Fang. It was not easy to have a chance to have intimate contact with his wife, but it was interrupted by him. That thing that did not know whether it was straight or gay was really detestable. Chapter 42-60 Red Glass. Yun Chujo was already speechless from anger. Men were indeed animals that leaned on the lower half of their bodies to think, and the gigolo was no exception. Even at this time, he still had the mood to take advantage of her. Shameless. Shameless. She was both embarrassed and angry. Previously, the situation was urgent, so she did not think too much and directly put the small silver snake into her arms. Who would have thought that this pervert actually had a nosebleed? He must be thinking of something good. She realized that once the pretty boy turned into a snake, he would become shameless. She glared at the small silver snake on the bed and found that its body was covered with a layer of ice. She wanted to ignore it, but she could not bear to do so. She could only get a simple hot water bag and put it under the quilt. Then, she stuffed the small silver snake in. The small silver snake gritted its teeth weakly. Wait for that thing that could be straight or bent. After Yun Chujo changed her clothes, she lifted the blanket and saw that the little silver snake was in better condition. She said, "What do you think about this matter? Who do you think did it?" A certain lord coldly snorted, "It's most likely Lan Luchen's doing. Otherwise, that person wouldn't have said that he wanted to capture you alive and wanted to kill me." Moreover, back then, the Lihan Palace had once searched for Mei Lan glaze in the Yulan Valley. It looks like it's not a coincidence. They really know that Mei Lan glaze can trigger the cold poison in my body. Yun Chujo nodded. If it was the people from the 9 pavilions, they could also explain why they knew about debeiming. It was because the inn where the 9 pavilions stayed was right across from them. Hence, they knew that debeiming had brought her away previously. However, how did they gather so many people so quickly? Could it be that they were all disciples who had come to participate in the sword technique conference? Yun Chujo recalled the incident where a certain man had turned into a snake and asked, "Did you use a secret technique again? Is that why you became like this?" A certain man did not deny it. In that situation, if he had not used a secret technique, it would have been very difficult for the two of them to escape unscathed. Yun Chujo instantly felt that the pretty boy was actually quite bitter. Although he had the spiritual power to fight against the heavens and the earth, there was a cold poison in his body that would flare up from time to time. Not to mention other things, the blue-colored glass was enough to take his life. Is there no way to solve the blue marble? Yun Chujo sighed and asked. It's not that there's no way. Once the cold poison in your body is solved, you naturally won't be afraid of the blue marble, a certain being said faintly. Yun Chujo poked the head of the small silver snake in a bad mood. You're just spouting nonsense. It's like you didn't say anything. Is there any other way? Debeiming hesitated for a moment and said, there is another way. If we can find the fiery red glass for cultivation, the blue succulent glass will no longer trigger the cold poison. However, I have read many books and asked Shui Wuji and Enfeng to investigate. There is no news about the fiery red glass. Perhaps it has gone extinct. Yun Chujo comforted him, everything in this world is mutually reinforcing and counteracting each other. Since the blue succulent glass has appeared, the fiery red glass must still exist. There will be news eventually. Debeiming acknowledged and then said, I was careless this time. If I knew that they had the sapphire blue glaze, I wouldn't have fallen for it when I was using my spiritual energy shield during the fight. Debeiming was a little annoyed. Originally, he was aggressive and came to settle the score with the little rascal. Now, he had become a little silver snake. Not only did he delay the official business, but he had lost all face and dignity. Chapter 42-61. The suicidal Chu Fang. Yun Chujiu comforted her a few more times and suddenly remembered what Xue Wuji had said to her. She picked up the silver snake skin and asked with a smile, "The head of the black chicken told me that you have to put aside the feelings between men and women. Even if you marry me in the future, you will only treat me as a decoration. Is there such a thing?" Di Baiming gritted his teeth. He hated Xue Wuji as well. He explained, "I do want to put aside the feelings between man and woman for the time being. After all, the most important thing now is to improve my strength. However, I didn't say anything about treating you as a decoration. Don't listen to Wu Jie's nonsense." Yun Chujiu frowned when she heard that. There was one good thing about a gigolo. He said what he said and said what he said. He would not lie. So, was Xue Wuji lying to her? She thought back to Xue Wuji's words and actions and gritted her teeth. The last few sentences were probably made up by that random Xue Wuji in order to attract her attention. She was too angry at that time, so she did not see through his little trick. Yun Chujiu was about to speak when Chu Fang's voice came from outside the room, "Junior sister Yun, can I go in?" The small silver snake's vertical pupils immediately flashed with a faint light. What was this bent and straight idiot doing here again? Yun Chujiu stuffed the small silver snake into the quilt and then opened the door. Chu Fang sized up Yun Chujiu. Seeing that she was fine, he heaved a sigh of relief. "Junior sister Yun, are you okay?" "I'm fine. There's not blood on my clothes. It's stained with something else." Yun Chujiu originally wanted to send Chu Fang away with a few words, but seeing that he had entered the room by himself, she could only close the door and walk to the table to sit down. Chu Fang lowered his voice and asked, "Junior sister Yun, is your fiancé really gone? You're not lying to me, right?" Yun Chujiu nodded. "Yes, he's gone. He has other things to do." Chu Fang suddenly seemed to relax a lot. He raised his voice and said, "I'm not saying this, Junior sister Yun, but your fiancé is too rude. He threw me down from the second floor without even asking for the truth. Look at what he did to me." Yun Chujiu looked at the bruised and swollen face of Chu Fang and said guiltily, "Senior brother Chu, I'm sorry. I've implicated you." Chu Fang waved his hand and said, "It's not your fault. The main thing is that your fiancé is too impolite. I see that he treats you coldly. He wouldn't hit you usually, right? If he really hit you, you can't have such a fiancé no matter how high your spiritual power is. As a man, you have to take care of a girl. How can you be so rude?" "You see, I have always been obedient to the little moon." Chu Fang shivered as he spoke. Why did he suddenly feel a little cold? The little silver snake under the blanket was about to explode in anger. "Good, very good. I will remember you." Yun Chujiu found it funny in her heart. For the sake of Chu Fang's little life, she began to change the topic. "Senior brother Chu, let's not talk about him for now. Are your injuries okay?" Chu Fang said a little embarrassedly, I'm fine. I didn't react at that time either. Otherwise, I wouldn't have fallen like this. Since you're alright, I'll go back first." "Oh right, I came to tell you that we'll set off tomorrow at midnight. Don't be late." Yun Chujiu nodded and sent Chu Fang out. This guy closed the door and giggled when he remembered what Chu Fang had said earlier. The small silver snake under the blanket glared at her fiercely. He had already killed Chu Fang again and again in his heart. Chapter 42-62. Yun Chujiu's guest. The next morning, Yun Chujiu got up on time and put the small silver snake into her sleeve. This way, she could keep warm and avoid being taken advantage of by this pervert. After everyone got on the flying spirit tool, Yun Chujiu felt that Zhuang Hong had been staring at her viciously. This guy sneered in his heart. If he didn't do anything evil, she would keep him for a few days. If he was looking for death, then she didn't mind giving him a ride. Thinking of Zhuang Hong, Yun Chuzhou thought of the middle-aged man from before. Then, she was suddenly shocked, and a bold guess surfaced in her mind. Could it be that the 9 pavilions were behind He Hongchuan, the old man with the triangular eyes, and the middle-aged man behind him at the sword technique conference? Although their words were directed at the 6 great sects, their main target was the nameless sword sect, which included the Flying Flower Island. Therefore, after learning about the Gigolo's news, they were able to gather a group of people so quickly. These people had other uses. However, their people had been dealt with by her one after another, so they changed their plans in an emergency. Then, the question was, what was the purpose of the 9 pavilions doing this? Yun Chuzhou thought that what they did was nothing more than to defame the reputation of the nameless sword sect, causing its reputation to plummet, and then slowly erode it. Yun Chuzhou wanted to tell Master Ouyang about her guess, but she felt that the evidence was insufficient. Moreover, she couldn't mention what happened last night, so she decided to put it aside for now and wait for the right time to bring it up. However, along the way, He Xinjiu often approached Master Ouyang. Her small mouth was so sweet that it was as if it was dipped in honey. Master Ouyang couldn't stop smiling. Master Ouyang now felt that it was not bad to take in such a disciple, but it was a pity that she was a female disciple. After some time, he would find a reason to take in a new disciple to train her. As for Yun Chuzhou, she could be his disciple, but she would definitely not be the successor of the sect master. If He Xinjiu knew what Master Ouyang was thinking, she would definitely sneer. How could she let others snatch what she liked? Dream on. After everyone returned to the nameless sword sect, He Xinjiu ran back to her courtyard. What He Xinjiu didn't notice was that a disciple from afar peeked at her. This unlucky person was the disciple who was knocked out by Di Baiming. Before Di Baiming left, he had threatened him. If he dared to leak his information, he would definitely kill him. Hence, this unlucky person didn't dare to tell anyone that Di Baiming had come. Now that he saw that Yun Chuzhou had returned safely, he heaved a sigh of relief in his heart. Yun Chuzhou returned to her own courtyard. After washing up, she released the drifters and the silly cuties as usual before she told Di Baiming her guess. It was inconvenient to talk on a flying spirit tool. Hence, these few days, other than stuffing some food into her sleeves, Yun Chuzhou basically did not communicate with a certain someone. Di Baiming felt that her guess was right. The 9 pavilions had been dormant for many years, and they had always been ambitious to rule the entire towering sky continent. The nameless sword sect and the other 5 sects were their stumbling blocks, so they must be plotting to get rid of them. I guess this is only the first step for them. There will be other actions in the future. You just need to remind Master Ouyang from the side, said Di Baiming. Yun Chuzhou nodded and said in puzzlement, let's not talk about the 9 pavilions first. I feel that the Divine Devil Hall is a little strange. Why has there been no movement? They have not been so quiet in other continents. Chapter 4263 won't scare you to death. When Di Baiming heard Yun Chuzhiu's words, he said indifferently, on one hand, your attention was attracted by the 9 pavilions, so you didn't notice the actions of the Divine Devil Hall. On the other hand, they had failed in the previous continents. This time, they naturally learned a lesson and did things more secretly. However, you don't have to worry too much. Sooner or later, you will be exposed. Yun Chuzhou thought about the taste of Di Baiming's words. Then, she widened her eyes and said in disbelief, You don't mean that the 9 pavilions have a relationship with the Divine Devil Hall, right? Di Baiming said noncommittally, it's hard to say. I have only found some clues, so I can't make a conclusion yet. Yun Chuzhou still couldn't believe it, the people of the 9 pavilions have real spiritual power. It doesn't seem like they used medicine to increase their spiritual power. Also, I've never seen them use secret techniques. How could it be related to the Divine Devil Hall? It's possible that I guessed wrong. In any case, it's good that you know. Di Baiming didn't say much. After all, he didn't have any concrete evidence. Yun Chuzhiu's emotions were a little complicated. Although she did not like Lan Luochen, she still could not believe that he had actually joined the Divine Devil Hall. After a moment of silence, Yun Chuzhou suddenly remembered something. Puzzled, she asked, Didn't Wu Ji's head say that after you broke the seal, you became like an ice sculpture? I see that you still know how to shamelessly take advantage of me. You don't look like an ice sculpture, but more like a pervert. The small silver snake closed its eyes and pretended to be dead, not making a sound. Yun Chuzhou pouted. TSK, it's not because you turned into a snake that you turned into a pervert, is it? No wonder you have two penises. Di Baiming, which eye of yours saw that I have two whats? Nonsense. He had an ice spirit root. The stronger his spiritual power was, the colder his temperament was. After turning into a small silver snake, his spiritual power had weakened a lot, so his temperament had changed. However, he didn't want to tell Yun Chuzhou, in case this little rascal became even more arrogant. Seeing that a certain one had been pretending to be dead, Yun Chuzhou smiled evilly and wanted to check the body of the small silver snake. The small silver snake was so scared that it directly crawled into the quilt. Hei Xinjiu had a sinister smile on her face. Little rascal, I won't scare you to death. The next morning, after Hei Xinjiu had breakfast, she jumped into the courtyard of Master Ouyang. Master, I've come to pay my respects to you. Master Ouyang nodded his head in gratification. It had to be said that ever since he had taken in this disciple, he felt that he had also become a few years younger. The master and disciple were chatting casually when Zhuang Hong walked in. Zhuang Hong saw that Yun Chuzhou wanted to strangle her to death, but he couldn't say anything because of Master Ouyang, so he could only pay his respects to Master Ouyang. Master Ouyang's attitude toward Zhuang Hong was much colder than Yun Chuzhou's. He was very disappointed in Zhuang Hong now, but because of the many years of master-disciple relationship, he didn't dissolve the master-disciple relationship. Master Ouyang's good mood was also gone. He waved his hand, indicating that the two of them could leave. Zhuang Hong and Yun Chuzhou walked out of Master Ouyang's courtyard one after the other. Zhuang Hong said viciously, Yun Chuzhou, don't be complacent. A good-for-nothing like you will be expelled from Master Ouyang sooner or later. Also, don't forget that you and I are not the same batch of disciples. Although we are both successive disciples, you are a generation lower than me. Before Zhuang Hong could say anything, Yun Chuzhou ran back to Master Ouyang's courtyard. Chapter 42-64 Account Book. Zhuang Hong was stunned. Then he remembered that Yun Chuzhou was full of bad ideas. He hesitated for a moment but still followed her. Before he got close to the living room, he heard Yun Chuzhou's loud voice. Master, Zhuang Hong has to address you as your brother in the future. He said that you are the big brother and he is the little brother. Zhuang Hong almost sat on the ground. This bitch was simply spouting nonsense. Master Ouyang's face darkened. What nonsense are you spouting? What a mess. Zhuang Hong also barged in at this time and said angrily, Yun Chuzhou, you're spouting nonsense. When have I ever said that? Yun Chuzhou blinked her eyes. Master, Zhuang Hong told me that he and I are not in the same batch of disciples, so we have to address him as martial uncle. Then the problem comes. You are my master, and he is my martial uncle. Then aren't you in the same generation as him? Master Ouyang was stunned. He didn't pay attention to these forms of address in the past, but now it seemed that it was a little inappropriate. However, how should he address her? Master, how about this? In any case, in the sect, only the elders and the successive disciples have a true master-disciple relationship. Then, it doesn't matter how many generations the successive disciples are, they can all address each other as the same generation. Yun Chuzhou suggested. Master Ouyang felt that it made sense. Although it was a little rough, at least it wouldn't be messy. Zhuang Hong wanted to object, but he knew that he would be rebuked by Yun Chuzhou if he said it out loud. Therefore, he didn't say anything, but he had some plans in his mind. After Zhuang Hong left, Hei Xinjiu said with a smile, Master, don't you think I'm quite smart? If you have anything that takes time and effort, you can teach me to do it. I guarantee that I will help you complete it beautifully. Master Ouyang glanced at Yun Chuzhou and pondered for a moment. He said, it just so happens that the account of the spirit stone mine has been handed over in the next few days. If you have time, help Master check it and see if they have tampered with it. Hearing that, Yun Chuzhou curled her lips slightly. This was simply a trivial matter, so she said, no problem. Master, where is the account book? I promised to find out all the tricks in it. Master Ouyang looked at her with a complicated expression, and then, a pile of account books appeared on the ground. Yun Chuzhou looked at the small mountain of account books, and her heart was like a dog that was complaining. Old man Ouyang was just messing with her, right? Master Ouyang coughed a few times. The affairs in the sect are complicated, so the account books have been piling up in my place, and I have never had time to check them. Since you are so smart, take them back and check them slowly. Hei Xinjiu had already bragged, but she could not slap herself in the face. She had no choice but to put the accounts into her storage ring and return to her own yard. Looking at the mountains of accounts in the yard, she felt that her head was about to explode. As expected, the older the ginger, the spicier it was. Old man Ouyang had seen through her thoughts, so he had made such a move to show her off. She had a photographic memory, and she was extremely smart. However, with so many accounts, how long would it take to review them? Just as she was worrying, the drifters thought that these account books were new toys that Yun Chuzhou had gotten for them. They crowded around and threw the account books around, enjoying themselves. Yun Chuzhou's head was buzzing. She stomped her feet and shouted, "Put them down. These are not toys for you." The more Hei Xinjiu shouted, the more excited the drifters became. They thought, it was too fucking fun. Chapter 4265, Troublemaking Drifters. Hei Xinjiu was so angry that she almost died. However, the drifters were not afraid of her at all. The ledgers were thrown all over the yard. Fortunately, the ledgers were much stronger than the ones in the secular world, otherwise, they would definitely fall apart if they were thrown around by the drifters. Hei Xinjiu roared in anger, "If you dare to be evil again, I won't bring you out in the future. You can put mushrooms in this yard." Hearing Hei Xinjiu's words, the drifters threw the books on the ground and went to play on the slide and swing. In fact, these drifters felt that they had played enough. Otherwise, Yun Chuzhou's threat would not have worked. Hei Xinjiu looked at the books on the ground and felt like crying. She did not need to cultivate after reading so many books. However, if she did not do it, Old Man Ouyang would have even more excuses not to give her power in the future. She was really in a dilemma. It was not that Hei Xinjiu had not thought of hiring people to help her with the accounting, but these accounts were confidential and it was not convenient for others to handle them. Just as Hei Xinjiu was feeling bitter, the little silver snake said, "This venerable self will audit with you. 2 people are faster than 1 person." Yun Chuzhou's eyes lit up. That's right, she still had a freeloader to feed. There was no need to use it. Therefore, Hei Xinjiu got Meng Yanshou and the rest to pick up the accounts books and arrange them neatly. She and Di Baiming started to audit the accounts. However, just as they started to audit the accounts, the drifters came to cause trouble. They threw the neatly arranged accounts books into the yard again. Hei Xinjiu was completely enraged this time. This fellow carried a large kitchen knife and chased after the drifters all over the yard. However, the drifters were not afraid of being hacked at all. They even rushed over to let her hack at them, almost causing this fellow to vomit blood in anger. A certain someone looked at Hei Xinjiu who was jumping all over the yard with doting eyes. He felt that such a lively little scoundrel was simply too cute. If Hei Xinjiu knew what this person was thinking, she would definitely roast him into a dried snake. Lively my ass. She was about to die from anger. Yun Chuzhou chased after him for a long time and was panting tiredly. She sat on the chair and panted as she scolded, "A bunch of white-eyed fools. I will tear down the swing and the slide in a while. Let's see if they are still showing off." When those fools heard that Yun Chujo was going to tear down the swing and the slide, they immediately stopped and sneakily returned the account books to the stone table. Yun Chujo narrowed her eyes. So these white-eyed drifters were afraid of this. However, the most important thing now was to review these account books first. When there was time, she would deal with these white-eyed drifters. When Yun Chujo thought of this, she picked up an account book and began to read it. She did not need to use any abacus. After scanning it with her eyes, the basic results were out. She stole a glance at the small silver snake and realized that he was also flipping the pages very quickly. Clearly, the speed of a certain person's mental calculation was not slower than hers. The corners of the guy's mouth curled. He became competitive and sped up. However, even though the speed of mental calculation was very fast, there were too many books. It would take them at least 7 or 8 days if they didn't eat or drink. Hei Shinjo was a little impatient. She threw the books on the stone table and looked at her group of silly cuties. Then, she said, "What's the use of raising you? If you can audit the books, can I go and cultivate?" But Face, who was running crazily in the yard, said eagerly, "Little fairy, if you don't mind that I'm stupid, I can help you do it. However, I only know how to add and subtract within 10. If you include my toes, I can barely do anything below 20. I won't count any more." Yun Chujo said, "Get lost." Chapter 4266 was finally completed, but Face was not angry even though he was scolded. He said slyly, "Little fairy, although I don't know how to calculate, curly hair knows it and so does that kitten. They are all scheming people. How can they not know how to calculate?" Yun Chujia's eyes immediately lit up. She looked at Meng Yanshou and the kitten and asked, "You guys know how to read accounts?" Meng Yanshou and the cat cub hated Butt Face, who was a snitch. However, they did not dare to lie. Meng Yanshou said dryly, "Just a little." The cat cub also said weakly, "I only know a little." Yun Chujo narrowed her eyes and did not say anything. She just threw a pile of books to the two. The two of them couldn't begin to look at the books bitterly. It would be great if they could play by the side. Who would be willing to look at this stupid thing? Yun Chujo looked at them coldly. Although the nightmare beast and the kitten were slightly slower than her and Di Biming, they were still much faster than the average person. As expected, they knew how to count. But Face saw Yun Chujia's cold gaze and was gloating in his heart. The kitten and curly hair had always wanted to compete for the pet. They wouldn't be able to trick the two of them to death. With the help of Meng Yanshou and Cat Cub, the speed was much faster. After 3 days, they had finally finished reviewing the pile of ledgers. Yun Chujo carefully looked at some of the connections in the ledgers. In the end, she wrote a summary of the results and eagerly went to see Master Ouyang. Master Ouyang had thrown a pile of ledgers to Yun Chujo in order to make her quit. Not to mention the position of sect master, he did not even want her to do the daily affairs. It was impossible for a female disciple to do these things. Therefore, when Master Ouyang heard that Yun Chujo had finished reviewing the books, he was shocked. Then he said with a straight face, "Little Jiu, this is not a joke. If you dare to deceive me, humph." Hearing that, Yun Chujo smiled and handed a few pages to Master Ouyang. "Master, please have a look." Master Ouyang's mouth twitched when he saw the dog-like handwriting on the pages. However, when he saw the contents, his face was full of shock. He followed the words written on the pages and randomly checked a few ledgers. He found that the flaws he pointed out were not wrong at all. Did she really finish reading all those ledgers in 3 days? Was she still human? After a long time, Master Ouyang finally came back to his senses. He said to the calm and composed Hei Shinjo, "You should go back first. I will look for you if I have any questions." How could Hei Shinjo leave just like that? What a joke. She had worked so hard for 3 days and was sent away just like that. In your dreams. "Master, I am your last disciple after all, and I can write and calculate." You should at least arrange some errands for me, right? I think it's good enough to inspect the upper, middle, and lower court's big kitchens when I have nothing to do. What do you think? Master Ouyang was so angry that he laughed. He had seen thick-skinned people before, but this was the first time he had seen such thick-skinned people. However, he thought that this little girl was a scoundrel. If she did not agree, she might not cause any trouble. After all, the big kitchen was not involved in anything, it was not a big deal to let her interfere. Therefore, he nodded. All right, then I will hand over the 3 courts big kitchen to you to manage. If anything goes wrong, I will hold you responsible. Yun Chuzhou immediately thanked her with a smile and left with the sect leader's decree. When this fellow left Master Ouyang's courtyard, the corners of her mouth curled up. There's no rush. Simmer it slowly. Let's take it slow. Sooner or later, she will make old man Ouyang cry and beg her to be the successor of the sect leader. Chapter 4267, The Ghost Realm. Hei Xinjiu went to the 3rd courtyard's kitchen and pretended to guide them for an inspection. Then, she shamelessly packed a pile of delicious food and strolled back to the courtyard. The people in the 3rd courtyard's big kitchen dared not to be angry, but they did not dare to say anything. After all, this little girl was now the last disciple of the sect master. One person achieved enlightenment, and the chickens and dogs ascended to heaven. The silly cuties also followed suit, hugging the meat bones and munching happily. When Dog 2 saw the cat cub's lack of interest, it had a thought. This cat cub was the most narrow-minded. Usually, it was very protective of its food, but today, it was acting so strangely. There must be something wrong. It eagerly went to Yun Chujia's side and said, Little fairy, I report. The cat cub is up to no good. If it didn't have something on its mind, why would it be so quiet? The kitten almost fell to the ground. It hurriedly said, Little fairy, don't listen to its nonsense. I'm just too tired from reading the books a few days ago. Yun Chuzhou narrowed her eyes. Among all these silly cuties, the one she was most worried about was this fake kitten. Although it placed its hopes on the soul transformation technique, it was hard to guarantee that it would play some tricks. When the cat cub saw Yun Chujia's cold gaze, it could not help but tremble. It stammered, I did hide something, but it's useless to say it out loud. Before Yun Chuzhou could say anything, Dog 2 glared at it and said, Whether it's useful or not, that's up to the little fairy. What's the use of saying that? Quickly tell me the truth, or I'll kill you. The kitten hated Butt-Face to death. However, Yun Chuzhou was protecting it, and although it was useless now, it was still an ancient fierce beast. It didn't have absolute confidence in killing it, so even if it hated it to the bone, it couldn't do anything. It could only say with an embarrassed expression, Since the little fairy wants to know, I'll just say it. I know where the blazing red glass is. What? Yun Chuzhou suddenly stood up and held the kitten's ear and asked, Do you know where the blazing red glazed tile is? Where is it? The little silver snake, who had been resting with its eyes closed, opened its eyes and stared at the kitten with a burning gaze. The kitten was so frightened that it trembled and said, I've also heard about it, so I don't know if it's true or not. It's rumored that the royal family of the Ghost Clan has the blazing red glazed tile. But the Ghost Clan is very fierce, and their cultivation methods are different from ours. So, it's useless even if I tell them or not. When Butt-Face heard about the Ghost Clan, he immediately regretted that he had said too much. He did not want to go to that kind of place again. He had scared his baby to death. Yun Chuzhou was at a loss. Ghost Clan? What's a Ghost Clan? Don't people have to enter reincarnation to become ghosts? Why is there a Ghost Clan? Di Baiming explained, the Ghost Clan is just a title, not a real Ghost Clan. The place where they live is called the Ghost Territory. After the Ghost Clan left the Ghost Territory, they entered the immortal soul state. The people in the world mistook them for ghosts, so they gave them the name of the Ghost Clan. Correspondingly, Other races could only enter the ghost territory in the immortal soul state, and the immortal soul of humans was the most fragile. Therefore, the ghost territory was never worried about being invaded by other races. Most importantly, the entrance to the ghost domain has always been hidden. Almost no one knows where it is, so the ghost race rarely interacts with other races. Although Yun Chujiu still had a lot of doubts, she finally knew most of it. She looked at Kitten and asked, "Do you know the entrance to the ghost domain?" A hint of schadenfreude flashed in Kitten's eyes. "I don't know, but Buttface knows that it disappeared for a few years. It is said that it was trapped in the ghost domain." Chapter 4268, "You are the only woman that I have my eyes on," Buttface shouted in exasperation. "Nonsense. I'm not trapped there, I'm just loitering. I'm an ancient beast, how can a mere ghost clan trap me?" The cat cub curled his lips in disdain and did not say a word. "Little fellow, are you trying to trick me? If I can't get better, don't even think about it. We are all in the same boat." Yun Chujiu looked at Dog 2's fierce appearance and curled the corners of her mouth. No wonder Dog 2 was afraid of ghosts. It was not the ghosts but the ghost clan that it was afraid of. However, looking at how afraid it was likely that the memories of the ghost realm were not very good. "Dog 2, do you know the entrance to the ghost realm?" Yun Chujiu asked faintly. Buttface shook his head like a rattledrum. I don't know. I was muddle-headed back then and accidentally stumbled into the ghost domain. I didn't know where the entrance was. Besides, little fairy, the ghost domain isn't a place for humans to go. Spiritual energy will be suppressed there, and it's still in the primordial spirit state. In addition, those ghosts are all very cruel and abnormal. Don't be stupid. Yun Chujiu knew that Buttface must know the entrance to the ghost realm when she saw the guilty look on his face. However, should she make such a trip? Di Baiming said in a deep voice, "Little Jiu, I'll make a trip to the ghost realm after my body recovers. You don't have to get involved in this matter anymore. You just need to cultivate well in the Nameless Sword sect." Before Yun Chujiu could say anything, Buttface shouted, "No, Your Excellency, you can't go." This time, both Di Baiming and Yun Chujiu were stunned. They knew something from Buttface's words. Yun Chujiu said coldly, "Buttface, it seems that you are hiding a lot of things from me. Tell me, what is going on?" Buttface wanted to slap himself twice. He blinked his eyes and said, "I don't know the specifics. I only know a little. If I'm wrong, you can't blame me." Yun Chujiu snorted coldly. This Buttface was becoming more and more calculative. His words were becoming more and more watertight. Seeing that Yun Chujiu ignored him, Buttface could only continue. The Ghost Clan and the Yen Clan had a good relationship for a period of time. Wasn't Your Excellency the lord of the Yen Clan in the past? That's why they had an acquaintance. It was said that Princess Mei Yen of the Ghost Clan admired the lord very much. She once said that she wouldn't marry anyone other than the lord. However, after the lord disappeared mysteriously, she didn't know whether Princess Mei Yen had married or not. Little fairy, think about it. If this lord goes to the ghost realm, wouldn't he be like a meat bun hitting a dog and never coming back? Di Baiming heard Buttface's metaphor and glared at him. However, this glance had a different meaning in Yun Chujiu's eyes. She sneered and said, "What? Are you afraid that I will know that you have an old lover?" Di Baiming rebuked coldly, "What nonsense are you talking about? Although I have lost a lot of my memories, I can swear to the heavens that from the beginning to the end, you are the only woman that I have taken a fancy to. Other women are no different from cats and dogs in my eyes." When He Xinjiu heard Di Baiming's words, she felt a little better. However, when she thought about it, this pretty boy had too many secrets. There might be a few coquettish bitches jumping out one day. She had to be on high alert, in case the wife's slave that she had painstakingly groomed was taken advantage of by others. Then, the question was, should she go to the ghost realm? Chapter 4269 Scheming Dog. While Yun Chujo was pondering, Di Baiming said coldly, "Little Joe, you should get rid of this idea as soon as possible. I will go there myself after I recover." Yun Chujo pouted and said, "What if you are set up by that whatever succubus? You are so stupid. I'm afraid that you will fall for it." Di Baiming, but face couldn't wait for Yun Chujo not to go to the ghost realm, so he said, "Little fairy, how can you not trust your excellency? Your excellency loves you more than gold, how can you like that succubus? Although that succubus is the #1 beauty of the ghost clan, in my opinion, she can't even compare to a strand of your hair. Your excellency will never like her." Yun Chujia's sense of danger grew stronger when she heard that succubus was the #1 beauty of the ghost clan. That old woman had lived for tens of thousands of years. She might have many tricks up her sleeves. No matter what, she had to go with her. Otherwise, what would happen if the pretty boy's virginity was taken away? Di Baiming knew what Yun Chujo was thinking when he saw her expression. He glared at Butt Face, who was not helping. He knew that Yun Chujo was fearless. No matter what, he had to calm her down first. Hence, he said, "How about this? After I recover, we will go together." Yun Chujo felt that this was a good idea, so she nodded and agreed. But Face immediately drooped his head. He did not want to return to that nightmare-like place. However, he was now the little fairy's beast. If the little fairy wanted to go, he could only follow her. The baby really wanted to cry. Just as Butt Face was feeling miserable, Yun Chujo asked, "Right, Butt Face, where is the entrance to the ghost realm?" Butt Face blinked his dog eyes. Although he did not want to say it, he still said, "It's far away and right in front of us. It's under the sword pool." Otherwise, where do you think these drifters came from? The Eye of Sword Intent was also the entrance, but it was probably destroyed by those drifters. This time, not only Yun Chujo, but even Di Baiming was surprised. Could these drifters have something to do with the ghost clan? Didn't they say that these were the killing aura? No wonder they could only stay in the puppet disc once they left the Eye of Sword Intent or the Nameless Sword sect. So this was the reason. Then they are the ghost clan? Yun Chujo asked in disbelief. Butt Face shook his head. They shouldn't be the ghost clan. Who knows what the hell they are? They look quite similar to the killing aura. The drifters heard their conversation and immediately fluttered around, not knowing why they were so smug. Yun Chujo looked deeply at Butt Face. She had thought that he was a good-for-nothing, but it turned out that he was a scheming dog who was loyal to the outside but a traitor. There must be a lot of things that he was hiding from her. When Butt Face saw Yun Chujo looking at him with an unfriendly gaze, he immediately shivered. "Little fairy, it's not that I didn't want to report it. It's just that the ghost domain is too dangerous. I'm doing this for your own good." If Yun Chujo believed him, there would be a ghost. However, she could also see that this scheming dog was full of schemes. It was useless to force it. She could only take her time to deal with it. However, the entrance was much easier in the sword pool. This way, she was not afraid that Di Baiming would leave her alone. That night, everything was quiet. Yun Chujo and Di Baiming also entered their dreams. Because there was a murderous aura guarding the courtyard, Yun Chujo did not release stupid Meng to watch the night. The murderous aura sneaked into the bedroom. The silver snake opened its vertical pupils. However, it quickly felt dizzy and did not know anything. Chapter 4270 Heading to the ghost region. A dark light flashed past the black bead in Yun Chujia's dantian, but it disappeared in an instant and did not make any movements. Guai Chao and the Great Void Mirror seemed to have noticed the unusual movements, but the two of them did not make any movements either. The murderous aura wrapped around Yun Chujo and the small silver snake and soon disappeared from the bedroom. Their movements were mysterious, and they skillfully avoided the patrolling disciples and headed towards the sword pool. Soon, they arrived at the sword pool. What was surprising was that with their wrapping, the sword lights could not hurt Yun Chujo and the small silver snake at all. Soon, they disappeared into the sword pool. Hei Shinjo was teasing a certain lord in her dream when she suddenly had a very strange feeling. It was as if her entire person was in an ethereal state. She opened her eyes in a quiver. However, she realized that she was in a red mist. To be exact, she was surrounded by a group of drifters. What was going on? She subconsciously looked for the small silver snake. She was shocked when she saw a phantom floating beside her. She muttered to herself with a dumbfounded expression, "Am I still in a dream? Otherwise, how did this pervert become like this?" A certain being, little Jiu, our primordial spirits have already left our bodies. We are both in the primordial spirit state now. Di Baiming's tone carried a hint of helplessness. He woke up earlier than Yun Chujo, but he could only watch as these drifters carried him forward. However, he saw that the place where their bodies were located seemed to be a secret room, and there were even some drifters surrounding it. It should be very safe. Yun Chujo was a little confused. What did they mean by Yuan Shen leaving the body? Why did Yuan Shen leave the body when he was sleeping? This fellow looked at his hand and realized that it was indeed a purple phantom. Just as she was confused. But Face's fawning voice came from behind. "Little fairy, I told you that these drifters are a little strange. They are indeed very strange. They actually led us into the passage leading to the ghost realm in a daze." But Face? Yun Chujo turned around and saw an earthy yellow phantom shaking its head and wagging its tail to flatter her. Yun Chujo frowned. "I remember that I didn't let you out at night. How did you follow me?" But Face had a sullen look on his face. He didn't want to follow her either. It would be much better if he could eat and drink in the spirit beast pouch. However, these damn drifters somehow managed to get his primordial spirit out of the spirit beast pouch and even brought it along with them. After hearing what Butt Face had told her, Yun Chujo pondered for a moment. It seemed that these drifters were selective. Otherwise, they would have brought the rest of the dumb cuties along, and not just Butt Face. Now was not the time to fight with these drifters. Since they had already gone to the ghost realm, she would go there and take a look. She wanted to see what the old witch who coveted her man looked like. After thinking it through, this fellow also had the mood to relax. He smiled and said to the little silver snake, "Prince Charming, you still don't know, right? I learned a little trick in the underground of the ghost city. I'll perform it for you to relieve your boredom." A certain someone was completely speechless. What kind of time was this? He actually still had the mood to play a little trick. His heart was really big. Yun Chujo did not care about a certain someone's reaction. She removed her arms and legs. Under a certain someone's horrified gaze, she transformed into countless purple light spots and then transformed into a certain someone's appearance. Chapter 4271 Turned into a human again. A certain someone looked at Hei Shinjo who was showing off, and the shock in his heart could not be described with words. A human's primordial spirit was extremely fragile. If it turned into a light spot like the little rascal just now, would it mean that her soul and spirit were destroyed? Not only was she fine, but she could even transform back into any form. How was this possible? Yun Chujo saw the small silver snake's dumbfounded expression and felt that she was awesome. Those shameless drifters began to show off as well. Yun Chujo secretly gritted her teeth. What did her ability have to do with them? They actually followed her and showed off as well. How shameless. Yun Chujo had enough of the small silver snake's shock and blinked her eyes. Although there shouldn't be any enemies in the ghost realm, her physique was really terrible. For safety reasons, it was better to change into another appearance. Thus, this fellow transformed into an ordinary-looking young girl. However, the edges of the phantom were different from the silver of the little silver snake and the earthen yellow of Butt Face. Instead, it was purple. Di Baiming knew her intentions and agreed with her. Everything in the ghost realm was unknown. It was always right to be careful. After drifting for almost a day, a dazzling light spot finally appeared in front of them. Yun Chujo knew that they were about to reach the exit. This guy was afraid that the silver snake and Buttface would get separated from him, so he wrapped the silver snake around his arm and held Buttface in his arms. Fortunately, they were both in the primordial spirit state, so there was no difference in their actions. When Dog 2 saw the silver snake's cold gaze, it shivered. It knew that the jealous god was angry that the little fairy was hugging it. However, even if it had to risk offending a certain god, it had to hold on to the little fairy tightly and not let go. The ghost domain was such a terrifying place. If it did not follow the little fairy, it would be very miserable. Finally, the drifters brought 3 of them to the exit, and a blinding light was emitted. When Yun Chujo regained her sight, she realized that she had become a human again. She pinched herself and grimaced in pain. Had she really become a human? Then, she looked at the clothes on her body. It was completely the same clothes that she had transformed into previously. It was simply too magical. Then, she looked at the little silver snake and Buttface on the ground beside her. They were almost exactly the same as before. However, the figures of the drifters had disappeared. Could it be that they did not follow them out? At this moment, Buttface said eagerly, "Little fairy, do you find it very strange? This is easy to understand." The members of the ghost clan turned into ghosts when they came to our side, so we turned into humans when we came to their side. Although Buttface said it in a roundabout way, Yun Chujo also understood what he meant. It was nothing more than talking about the ghost realm, where the primordial spirit turned into a corporeal body. Due to a certain god's memory loss, he also felt that this experience was very fresh. However, he was not as obvious as Yun Chujo. Because she no longer had a storage ring on her body, Yun Chujo could not see her own appearance now. She asked, "Prince Charming, do I look like my original appearance after I'm easily transformed?" Di Baiming said, "It's your transformed appearance. But why is there a red mole between your brows?" Yun Chujo could not see it without a mirror. She said casually, "I guess I didn't notice it when I transformed. I'll see if I can transform into something else." Yun Chujo tried the previous method. Her body actually turned into purple smoke and then transformed into Shui Wuji's appearance. However, there was still a red mole between her eyebrows that was as red as blood. Chapter 4272, Dog 2's elemental energy level. Yun Chujo once again reverted to her original appearance and frowned. She had a guess. Could this damnable red dot be those drifters? When these damnable drifters were in the Nameless Sword sect, they always wanted to make her frown. Now, she finally got what she wanted. However, now was not the time to bicker with them. The important matter was still more important. Yun Chujo tried to use her spiritual power and found that her spiritual power had been suppressed to the 8th level of the spirit enhancement realm. She was so angry that she almost vomited blood. Spirit enhancement? How far away was this level? Wasn't it so weak that she could not even summon De Hua? She tried to summon De Hua. Not to mention De Hua, she could not even summon a small purple needle. This guy felt a little uncertain. He could not use the big kitchen knife, De Hua, and those stupid cuties. His spiritual power had been suppressed to the level of the spirit enhancement realm, and he had 2 free food beside him. His future was bleak. A certain god did not know that he had been treated as free food by He Shinjo. He looked a little annoyed and tried to summon an ice dragon. Soon, an ice dragon appeared in front of the 2 of them. He Shinjo saw the ice dragon and widened her eyes. She asked, "Prince Charming, what level is your spiritual power suppressed to?" "I'm only at the 8th level of the spirit enhancement level now. The ghost realm is indeed very strong in suppressing spiritual power. But fortunately, at least I can still release the ice dragon. It's just that using it once will consume a lot of spiritual power," Di Baiming said in a deep voice. Yun Chujo was so angry that she was speechless. This was a blatant discrimination. Why could a gigolo be able to use a spiritual beast when they were both at the 8th level of the spirit enhancement realm? Why couldn't she? Oh right, it seemed that when they were in the Qing Xian continent, the gigolo's spiritual power was also suppressed. But he could also use a spiritual beast. It was really fucking unfair. This guy pouted and ignored Di Biming. Instead, he carefully observed the surrounding environment. She had roughly scanned the area before and realized that this was a wilderness. It did not look any different from the towering sky continent. It was just that it was remote and desolate. But Face, do you know where this is? But Face narrowed his dog eyes and said, the ghost domain has many such wilderness, so I can't tell where this is. However, the yuan qi here is very thin. It's most likely the base domain. Dog 2 saw that Yun Chuzhou and the small silver snake were somewhat confused. It explained, the ghost race cultivates not spirit energy but yuan qi. Yuan qi is extremely important to them, so they divided the ghost domain into 3 regions: base domain, flat domain, and imperial domain. The base domain mainly lives in the commoners, while the flat domain lives in the commoners and a portion of the commoners who are servants. The imperial domain is the aristocratic families and the imperial family. Yun Chuzhou asked curiously, it's easy to understand the aristocratic families and the imperial family. What's the difference between commoners and commoners? And according to what classification? Dog 2 looked at Yun Chuzhou sympathetically. According to the classification of elemental energy, little fairy, you don't have a single trace of elemental energy at the moment, so you are definitely a lowly commoner. If you want to get close to the imperial family and obtain the blazing red glaze tile, the most important thing is to increase your elemental energy. Otherwise, not to mention going to the imperial region, even surviving is a problem. Yun Chuzhou glanced at it. From what I hear, you have elemental energy. Dog 2 immediately said smugly, no matter what, I was once trapped in this ghost domain. Yes, I roamed around for hundreds of years. In the end, I didn't even put the royal family in my eyes, let alone the commoners. It's just that my soul has only recovered a little, speak human language. So there's not much elemental energy left. Cough, cough. It's only at the level of a rank 3 origin beast, which is equivalent to the 3rd level of the ghost clan, but Face said guiltily. Chapter 4273, Gopher Hunting. Although Yun Chuzhou did not know the level of elemental energy, seeing the guilty look on Dog 2's face, she knew that it was most likely the lowest level of elemental energy. After asking, it was indeed the lowest level of elemental energy. Yun Chuzhou asked Dog 2 about the cultivation method of elemental energy. Little fairy, you are a human, and I am a beast. This cultivation method is different. If you want to learn how to cultivate elemental energy, you can only buy some cultivation books or find someone to teach you. However, it is very difficult to get started. I reckon that you and your majesty will need a long time to catch up to me. Seeing that a certain lord in He Xinzhou did not have elemental energy at the moment and that he was the most powerful, Dog 2 could not help but feel a little smug. Yun Chuzhou frowned. Whether it was buying books or finding someone to teach, the most important thing was to have money first. No matter what currency was here, she did not have a single cent. Her gaze landed on Dog 2. Dog 2, when we reach the town, I will sell you for some money. After that, you can think of a way to run back. But Face, you'll lose your baby if you act like this. Of course, Yun Chuzhou was trying to scare But Face so that he wouldn't think that she had elemental energy and act all smug. A certain deity naturally knew what Yun Chuzhou was thinking and said cooperatively, this idea is not bad. Although it doesn't have much use, it's not a bad idea to let people buy it to eat meat. But Face was so scared that he was about to cry. His ears and tail immediately drooped as he said with a sobbing tone, Little fairy, I was wrong. I shouldn't be so smug. I'll definitely tuck my tail between my legs and become a dog again in the future. Yun Chuzhou curled her lips. It's fine if you don't sell it. Think of a way to earn money. If you can't think of one, I'll have to sell you. But Face thought bitterly for a while, then, he said, I remember that there's a type of sword-toothed gopher in this wilderness. It's only a rank 1 origin beast, which is equivalent to the first layer of the ghost clan. Although it's not very valuable, it can be exchanged for some money. Why don't we capture some and sell them for money? Yun Chujo had no other choice but to bitterly follow Buttface and start catching gopher. Buttface found a palm-sized hole with familiarity and said to Yun Chujo, "Little fairy, you stay here. I'll go to another hole and release my elemental energy. It will run out from this hole. You just need to catch it." After seeing Yun Chujo nod, Buttface ran to a hole in the distance and began to release his elemental energy into the hole. He also used his claws to dig a hole. After the sword-toothed gopher was frightened, it panicked and wanted to escape from the other hole. However, it was caught by Yun Chujo. The sword-toothed gopher was in a hurry to escape. Its sharp long teeth bit towards Yun Chujo's finger. Yun Chujo hurriedly raised her spirit energy shield. The spirit energy barrier was torn into pieces by the scimitar-toothed hamster's sharp teeth. Fortunately, at this time, Buttface jumped over and bit the scimitar-toothed hamster's throat. The scimitar-toothed hamster's neck tilted and it died. Yun Chujo frowned. It seemed that the first level of the original level was higher than the 8th level of the spirit enhancement. Her and the pretty boy's spirit energy was not enough. Moreover, they did not dare to use their spirit energy in front of outsiders. Therefore, the most important thing was to quickly cultivate their elemental energy. Following that, Yun Chujo and Buttface worked together to catch more than a dozen saber-toothed gophers. When they felt that it was about time, they identified the direction and walked towards the edge of the wilderness. Yun Chujo said with a faint smile, "Buttface, I see that you have a lot of mouse-catching skills. You caught quite a lot of these things before, right?" Chapter 4274, The Dog Gets the Mouse. Buttface stammered and didn't say anything. When he thought of the miserable days when he got the mouse, he felt that this was the biggest dark history in his life. Back then, he accidentally bumped into the ghost realm, and his spiritual power was suppressed. In order to not starve to death, he could only use these sword-toothed gophers to satisfy his hunger. If it weren't for his strong body as a fierce beast, he would have died in this ghost realm long ago. Yun Chujo saw that dog too was drooping its head, so she did not continue to tease it. Instead, she said slyly to a certain venerable, "Prince Charming, do you have any thoughts about revisiting this old place? Soon, you will see Princess Mayenne. Are you excited?" This venerable one does not remember anything, so it is not a revisiting of the old place. You don't have to test this venerable one anymore. This venerable one's taste is not that bad. Any Tom, Dick, or Harry can be compared to this venerable one, the venerable one said coldly. When Yun Chujo saw that a certain venerable one had even come out with a venerable one, she knew that he was angry. She hurriedly said, all right. I won't mention it. I care about you, right? If you were snatched away by someone, my heart would be broken into 108 pieces. Hearing Yun Chujo's words, the certain venerable one was clearly very pleased. He felt that the entire snake was very comfortable. Buttface secretly curled his lips. It was really mushy. Moreover, what he thought was simple. He did not have any essence energy at the moment. How could he still dream of entering the Imperial region? Wishful thinking. Of course, this fellow only dared to think about it in his heart, but he did not dare to say it out loud. Perhaps it was because the resources in the wilderness were too scarce. Yun Chujo did not encounter any other essence beasts as she walked all the way to the edge of the wilderness. All she could see was a bumpy dirt road. Both sides were filled with rubble and sand, making it very desolate. Little fairy, it seems like my judgment is correct. This is indeed the scum domain, Dog 2 said as it looked at the situation on both sides of the dirt road. It's good that it's the scum domain. After all, I don't have any origin energy now. If I were to go to the other two domains, I'm afraid I won't be able to save my life, Yun Chujo said indifferently. Dog 2 curled its lips. Little fairy, you just happen to be wrong. At the very least, the Ping domain and the Imperial domain still had law enforcement teams and order. However, there were no laws and restrictions in the scum domain. They adhered to the principle of the strong preying on the weak. It was very normal to rob and kill people on the streets. Therefore, you should seek your own fortune. Yun Chujiu frowned. She was currently as weak as a piece of trash. If she really encountered a villain, forget about protecting the pretty boy and dog too, she might not even be able to protect herself. However, if she did not enter the town and had no way to cultivate elemental energy, she would really be in a dilemma. But Face saw Yun Chujiu's worry and said, "Little fairy, the elemental energy of the commoners in the towns near the wilderness is usually very low, only around the 3rd level of the Yuanchu realm. With me protecting you, you don't have to be afraid. Little Jiu, if they are only at the 3rd level of the Yuanchu realm, I can release the ice dragon at the critical moment to let us escape. It shouldn't be a problem for you to be careful." Even though Buttface and Di Baiming said so, Yun Chujiu still felt that it wasn't very safe. She blinked her eyes and transformed into a burly man. Then, she said in a muffled voice, "It should be better this way. Let's go." When Buttface saw the red mole between the burly man's eyebrows, he couldn't help but stagger. Wasn't this scene too sour and refreshing? Yun Chujiu also slowly recalled the red mole between her eyebrows. She simply smeared some saber-toothed rat blood on her forehead, so that others would think that it was accidentally stained with blood. You're tuning in to the Blissful Bookshelf YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.